When you're worried about underarm sweat and odor, it can be distracting. Like this. Or this. Or even this. It's time to silence those distractions with a spray of powerful Dove Men Plus Care Antiperspirant. Featuring our 72-hour protection and soothing 1/4 moisturizing cream. Because when you forget about your underarms, you can focus on being unforgettable. Dove Men. Forgettable underarms, unforgettable you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Show Before the Show, the official podcast of Minor League Baseball. I am Sam Dykstra, and once again this week, I am introducing the show because Tyler Mon is not in a different country. He's on a completely different continent. He's over in mainland China this week, and for a little bit, calling the U23 Baseball World Cup over there in China. As many of you know who listen to the show, Tyler is a world traveler when it comes to baseball, a world broadcaster. So we can't wait to hear how things are going over there. But while he's dealing with travel and getting everything settled over there, it's just myself and my co-host, who I'll bring in now, Benjamin Hill. Ben, how are you?
Doing well. You know, when you said that Tyler's not just in another country, I was like, well, wait, what's he going to say next? And I thought it was going to go on to like he's on another planet, you know?
Like, it's the Galactic Cup, the U23 Baseball Galactic Cup.
Yeah, I mean, that's Tyler's next career move. He's moving to other continents, but time to get to some other planets. Some Saturn baseball, Mars baseball. There's other planets out there, but those are the only two planets I know.
If you thought Coors Field was bad for, park factors, just imagine what it's like to play like on Mars. Is it bad that my brain immediately went to, am I going to have to rank the top 30 prospects on Mars?
You probably will one day. You probably will. But you know, the best play to play, the planet that has won the most championships is Saturn.
It has the most rings?
Yeah. Yeah.
Good. That is good.
I do my best.
That was very quick. Well, Ben, we're going to get to this in a little bit, but the high A and single A seasons are coming to a close this week. The regular seasons, we should say, postseason play begins next week at those levels. But we are starting to really wind down the minor league season. High A, single A out after this week, double A out after next week, and then triple A done at the week after that. But as we kind of, wrap things up here, we're already starting to look forward to 2025 in many ways. And if you're listening to the show Friday afternoon, you won't know exactly what this is. If you're listening to it over the weekend, you might actually know the name of this team, but we're very close to an actual team name reveal for the 2025 season. What is that?
Yeah. Well, I can't tell you.
You can't tell. You can't tell. This is how I was trying to trick you and getting the audience some info. But it is coming out Friday night, so it's not like we're that far. But.
Yeah, we've got a new identity debuting. Well, if you're listening to this podcast on the day it came out, this evening, Friday evening, September 6th. The team that is currently the Mississippi Braves, based in Pearl, Mississippi, just outside of Jackson. They play at Trustmark Park, have done so for the past couple decades, of course, as the Braves Double-A affiliate. In the Southern League, that Double-A Braves Southern League affiliate is moving to Columbus, Georgia, and playing in a essentially new ballpark. We're gonna have to do some deep diving here, whether it's a completely new ballpark or a massively renovated old ballpark, because it's actually like 100-year-old ballpark. It's on the site of a 100-year-old ballpark, and they're keeping some elements of that structure, but for the most part, all intents and purposes, this is a new ballpark. The naming rights partner is Synovus, Synovus. So it's essentially a new ballpark in a familiar site where minor league baseball has been played for many years. I guess most recently is the Columbus Catfish in the South Atlantic League in the 2000s into 2006 or 2007 or so. Anyhow, Columbus, Georgia, the relocating Mississippi Braves are on the cusp of announcing their new team name today, Friday, September 6th. So there will be an article about that. If it's not up already, depending on when you're listening to it, will be on Friday evening about this new identity. And yeah, the 2024 season is not even over yet. And here we are on the cusp of talking about the first brand new identity of 2025. So keep an eye out for that. And next week we will talk about that in detail. We will talk about this new Columbus, Georgia baseball team identity in detail, and also hopefully talk about the Mississippi Braves a little bit as well as they say goodbye to 20 years in Pearl, Mississippi. So per usual, it's that usual mix of the bittersweet and sadness of a team leaving and the excitement of a team arriving. You can't have one without the other. It's the yin and the yang, as it were.
Yeah. And I want to congratulate you on your restraint there because you didn't give any hints on what the team name could be, and you didn't drop any potential puns on what the team name could be.
No, I didn't. A few went through my mind, and now you've set me up to do it again, but I'm not going to crack. And crack is not, there's no,
there's nothing involved in that.
Yeah, there's no, I mean, what would a crack? Whatever. Let's not even go down these roads. No puns, but new team, Columbus, Georgia, dropping imminently.
Well, you talked about there being a kind of sort of new stadium, almost like a ship of Theseus type situation, where like if you replace every plank of the boat, is it a new boat or is it the same boat? So we'll kind of keep on that ballpark train, and we're talking about like we're already getting excited for something in 2025. This is something that would come in 2026. Richmond Flying Squirrels have played in the Diamond forever. I mean, going back to when they were a AAA affiliate of the Atlanta Braves, now they're a Double-A affiliate of the San Francisco Giants. Always draw exceptionally well for that stadium. So this isn't a situation where like they need a new park to draw more people out. But the Diamond is old. It's been there a long time. It could use some renovation. So they're breaking ground soon on a new park in Richmond for 2026. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that'll be called CarMax Park, and that will open in 2026 in Richmond. This is an odyssey that has been going on forever to build a new ballpark in Richmond. The Richmond Braves and Richmond Flying Squirrels are actually, two separate franchises. There was the Richmond Braves, who relocated the AAA team in the International League, who actually way back in like 2007, 2008, one of the reasons for leaving Richmond, this AAA team, was because the Diamond, which was built in the mid 80s, was not a facility they wanted to keep playing in. That team relocated to Gwinnett and now exists today as the Gwinnett Stripers, the Braves AAA affiliate. Then after a year without baseball, the Connecticut Defenders in the Eastern League relocated to Richmond and became the Flying Squirrels. That team is a San Francisco Giants affiliate. And when that relocation happened, 15 years ago, it was with at the time, understanding and expectation and already far down the road of getting a new ballpark in Richmond. So for it to go 15 years and not have a new team is a pretty remarkable thing, or not a new team, but a new ballpark. It's pretty remarkable that it's gone that long. And yeah, you could do a timeline of, okay, we picked this location. Oh, it didn't work here. And we're going to break ground here. Maybe. Nope, that didn't work. And funding falling through, and, arguments or debates regarding, different places to play in terms of its historical impact, environmental impact, whatever. It's been a long process. And so now there will be a new ballpark, CarMax Park, 2026, in very close to the same location as where the Diamond is. And if you have not been to Richmond's The Diamond, you'll have a whole nother season to try to get to it in 2025. And I love that ballpark. Have you ever been there, Sam?
I've driven outside of it. I've been to Richmond a few times. My cousin used to live down there, but I was always there in the off season, so I never got to go. It's so funny to see like how it just raises out of the ground. It's very easy to find in that downtown location. I think the Washington football team used to have their practice or their like preseason practice facility right around the corner, right? Like that used to be where a lot of sports happened in Richmond. But no, I've never been to a game itself in Richmond, and maybe I'll try to make it there next year just to catch the Diamond before it goes.
Yeah, it's worth going to. And like you mentioned, I mean, it just rises out of the ground, this big concrete hulk. And one of the reasons I have nostalgia for it, I've been there a couple times, or I guess a preemptive nostalgia since they're still playing there another year, is that it is the minor league version of the major league stadiums that were dominant in the 70s and 80s. The Veteran Stadium, Three Rivers, the Old Bush Stadium, those kind of ballparks, multi-purpose, huge, hulking, circular concrete behemoths. So even though it's clear when you go there that its time is past, it is just a nostalgic kind of park. When you think of a classic park, you think of something with a wooden grandstand and really intimate and, built in with WPA money during the Great Depression and that kind of thing. But enough time has passed that in a weird way, a park like the Diamond is classic in its own way. And, the Richmond Flying Squirrels, I don't want to say they were their own worst enemy, but Richmond is a great market. They're great operators, and they've consistently led the Eastern League in attendance. And so, in a way that worked against them over the years, when they're angling for a new ballpark and things are falling through, it's just kind of like, why do you need a new ballpark? You're doing great in this one. Of course, the argument for a new ballpark is not just regarding attendance, it's also player facilities. And with that issue as more prevalent than it's ever been in terms of teams having to meet Major League Baseball facility standards, I think that helped it push it forward even more, because the amount of renovations that would happen just on the player development side to keep going, let alone on the fan-facing amenity side, at that point, you're talking so much money that time to say goodbye to the concrete behemoth and move to a new ballpark, Carmax Park, which will be, I believe, in the same area. The team has put out a press release if you want some more details on it. So it's great for Richmond, great for that team, great overall that they finally are getting it done. But of course, it'll be sad to say goodbye to the Diamond, and a lot of people in that area and beyond have great memories of that place and will miss it when it's gone.
Yeah, I think this is one of those opportunities where we kind of have to separate ourselves from this story, because we look at minor league baseball as 120 teams, 119 ballparks, and it's a great big tapestry, and you want some diversity in that. You want some of these cool older parks that just stand out because of how different they are. But then you got to think of, like, if you're somebody living in Richmond and you have an opportunity for a new park with new amenities and new experience, and we talk all the time about how these fancy new parks are great for the game and how they, build community sport. You want that in your own backyard. So the people of Richmond kind of get that starting 2 years from now, or I guess a year and a half from now, which is crazy to think about for 2026. We're talking a lot about the future. The present isn't over. Like, the season is not.
I like that quote, Sam. The present isn't over.
The present is never over,
No.
really, when you think about it.
No.
But you always put out these month-to-month promo previews, and because there's baseball being played in September across minor league baseball, that means there are minor league promotions across the country. So as you were putting this together, what were some of the standouts?
Yeah, it is strange. I mean, we've gotten, I guess, starting to get used to this new minor league schedule of more games in September. But for me, for so much of my career and many of our careers, it had been Labor Day, hard out. Although there were always a few games being played in the Pioneer League, they'd go past Labor Day into the following Thursday or so. But beyond that, it was Labor Day done. Now we have these like kind of tiered conclusions of the season. High A and single A wrapping up this week, Double-A on the 15th, and then Triple-A on, was it September 24th, I want to say. The last Sunday in September, I believe it is. So there's baseball in September and things to write about in September. 22nd.
In case anybody was buying tickets for a game on the 24th.
Yeah, is it the 22nd?
It is the 22nd.
Man, I thought it was more than that. I'm looking at my calendar because I as if I don't trust Sam, but of course Sam is correct.
Who also looked at a calendar. Like, we're looking at the same iPhone calendar.
That's true. So I'm sorry for doubting you, Sam. September 22nd will be the final regular season games for Triple-A, 1 week after Double-A. So what do we have happening? Well, how about Saturday, September 7th? The Rocket City Trash Pandas have done this before, but they're having their Huntsville Stars tribute night. Trash Pandas playing Madison, Alabama, just outside of Huntsville. Whoa, that was a weird call.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to suppress it, and then it came out even weirder. Excuse me, listeners. But Huntsville Stars night in Rocket City on September 7th. And if you're there for that game, stop by Joe Davis Stadium where the team used to play. That has now been renovated into a soccer facility. So you can see the new era for Joe Davis Stadium, and also have a throwback night with the Rocket City Trash Pandas as they play as the Huntsville Stars in pretty sweet red throwback jerseys. What else do we got? The following day on Sunday, and this kind of, we'll get more into this next week. But yeah, new team in Columbus means a final game for the Mississippi Braves. Their final home game at Trustmark Park is this Sunday, September 8th. So that'll be a bittersweet occasion. I think at the moment they have not been eliminated from postseason contention, but they're 4 games out or so with not much left to play. So it is likely this will be the very final game at Trustmark Park. So Sunday, September 8th, be there for that and get a commemorative coin. Pretty cool giveaway.
Yeah.
And I love looking at promo schedules for like last games because it's still like kids run the bases and all the things they always do on Sundays. And I've been at ballparks last games where there's that surreal feeling of like, this is all over. But you just still operate normally until the very, very end. So that'll be Sunday, September 8th. Another one I want to get to later, LaMichael Mitchell night. Man, I thought this was September 15th, but it says in the article September 12th. So yeah, it is September 12th. LaMichael Mitchell night in Charlotte. Another one I'd like to get more in depth later, but LaMichael Mitchell is the Charlotte Knights' biggest fan. I've met him a few times. He wrote a guest post for my blog years ago when I had Ben's Biz blog about how much he loved the Charlotte Knights. He keeps score at every game. I believe he's autistic, so he has the kind of mind, super good at remembering players, stats, numbers, keeping immaculate scorebooks, just being a positive presence. And I love that the Knights are dedicating a night to him, LaMichael Mitchell, on September 12th. What else we got? What else do we got? I remember talking about this before the season even started, but Indianapolis Indians saluting one of their all-time franchise heroes, Razor Shine, from September 13th through 15th, the Razor Shines weekend. He played for the Indians from 1984 to 1989, and again from 91 to 93. So pretty much an entire decade, more or less. And he spent some time in the majors and bounced around a little with that. He didn't necessarily spend full seasons, but for a decade, he was a Indianapolis stalwart, part of championship winning teams. The PA announcer used to announce him, really rolling the R's and that razor. And I think that really helped initially gain his popularity because people just loved hearing him come to bat, and his name was Razor. But you have to be a good player on top of that and stick around for a long time to become a legend. And he did both of those things. So there will be t-shirts, bobbleheads, Razor will be there, signing autographs. And the team, who has been around for well over 100 years, one of the longest running franchises in minor league baseball, are retiring his number 3, Razor Shines.
And then go ahead and read that last sentence of your Razor Shines blurb.
What did I write there?
Ben. Just share that for the listening public.
Razor is a cut above.
Of course he is.
Wow.
Yeah, right.
Wow, such good writing by me. Per usual. Maybe Josh Jackson will be at this game September 14th in Portland. The Sea Dogs, they're having their annual, I don't think they can use the term Field of Dreams for maybe copyright issues, but they, for years...
Their Kevin Costner film appreciation.
Yeah. Their Fan Appreciation Day, they actually construct a cornfield in the outfield and have the players emerge in vintage uniforms and then walk out onto the field, real sepia tone moment, and then go into the stands and thank the fans personally after emerging from the cornfield. That's been a tradition of theirs for a lot of years. This year's iteration in Portland is September 14th. Another ballpark to say goodbye to, although this team is staying within the same larger market, but the Tennessee Smokies, where I know you've been recently, in Sevierville / Kodak, near Pigeon Forge. They're moving back to Knoxville proper next year. So they're giving away a last game ball on September 15th to close out the season. But this game ball even says last regular season game. And it's good that it says that because the Smokies are back in the playoffs. So while this will be the last regular season game at Smoky Stadium, stay tuned for at least one, I guess, how it shakes out. Right. But between 1 and 4 or 5 more games at Smoky Stadium, depending on how the Southern League playoffs go in the postseason. What else? The Amarillo Sopital's calf fries socks have already been given away. So that was on September 1st. Check eBay if you want a pair of socks with the calf fries logo on it.
I'm just trying to think of how you explain that. Like, you first have to explain what a calf fry is. Then you have to say, see, this is a sock that goes to my calf.
Oh, you're right. Did I even make that connection? Yeah, they're calf fries. They go up, then the socks go up to your calf.
Yeah, these are not ankle socks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I did right. I wrote, thanks to this sock giveaway, fans can display calf fries on calves and thighs. All right.
There you go. That's even better than what I said. I didn't even think of fries and thighs.
Yeah, I write things and then don't even know I wrote them. We already missed the night of horrible promotions, Hickory Crawdads, or actually we didn't miss
We
it.
didn't
Sam.
miss it as we're recording here
Yeah.
in the present. The present is not over.
The present's not over. So Sam and I actually could. It would be a madcap adventure. Somehow make our way to Hickory, North Carolina tonight to see their night of horrible promotions. But by the time this podcast airs, that'll be over, and hopefully it was as horrible as possible.
It would be a night of horrible promotions and an afternoon of horrible decisions and driving.
It'd be fun.
It would be fun.
We'd look back on it and be like, wasn't that crazy that we just talked about the night of horrible promotions on the podcast and then just went to Hickory, North Carolina? We could do it. Get a flight to Charlotte. They leave. We got 3 airports to choose from. Get to Charlotte, get a rental car. We could do it.
We could do it. We could do it.
But we're not. I guess we're not going to. Akron Rubber Ducks, Brian Windhorse bobblehead on September 14th. You know, he is part of, he's a top NBA reporter, and he's from Akron. So if you like to see NBA reporters honored with their own bobbleheads at minor league ballparks, doesn't happen very often, but Brian Windhorse bobblehead in Akron, September 14th. And one more bobblehead, Josh Wetzel. I should really know how to say his name. Wetzel. Yeah, Wetzel like pretzel. I knew that. The longtime broadcaster for the Rochester Red Wings. He's been calling games for the Red Wings since 2003. He gets his own bobblehead on September 21st in Rochester. And, you know, maybe some stray things will come up in these final weeks of the season, but that more or less does it as I suppress a cough yet again for promotions here in the 2024 minor league season. But still stuff coming up as this column, as this conversation attests. And enjoy every moment because the present is not over.
Yeah. And if you go to any of these promotions, please tweet at us at Sam Dykstra MILB or at Ben's Biz. Send us an email, podcast@milb.com. We want to see it. Like, you know, we do this stuff so you guys are aware of it. And I'm sure if you're living in any of these markets, you're probably aware of what promotions are going on. Some of these might not be news to you, but maybe they are. Or maybe you want to be the one to go to, well, not Hickory, but like you're the one who wants to go pay homage to Razor Shines in Indianapolis if you live in the surrounding area. So if you ever go to any of these promotions we mentioned here on the podcast, please send us a picture or a full review of what the bobblehead looks like or the giveaway, what have you.
Absolutely. We would love to include that kind of thing. And I can include that sort of thing in my newsletter as well. This most recent edition of my newsletter, I finally told the story of the drama that took place when I was in Durham with my designated eaters. It is a very stupid story that I devoted way too much time to, but I tried to tell it. So subscribe to the Ben's Biz Beat if you want to hear about designated eater drama in Durham.
The only exception I'll throw out there is we don't need to see pictures of you wearing the calf fries calf socks.
No,
you can just hold the calf socks. We don't need to see them on your feet.
If you want to model them, do it.
Send those ones to Ben.
Yeah, send them just to me. Calf fries on your calves and thighs.
All right, Ben. Well, you are back here in New York after your last trip on the road. One of the stops you made, as we've discussed in previous podcasts, was in Toledo. And Toledo has, been dealing with a tragedy this season. Their longtime broadcaster, Jim Weber, passed away in the middle of the season. So they've been dealing with that loss and trying to honor Jim as the season's kind of wrapping up here in the final weeks. But you got to talk to one of the broadcasters who shared the booth with him and is also playing out the string in that booth, Matt Melzak.
Yeah, Matt Melzak. I talked to him on my Sunday afternoon in Toledo a couple weeks back, specifically about Jim Weber. The two had worked together for quite some time, had become very close, and it's hard to imagine, how difficult that is to work daily with someone in such an intimate way, calling games together for years and years and years. And then Jim Weber passed away unexpectedly at the age of 78. So he just did a game one night. I believe it was on a Wednesday or Thursday night, and then he was gone. So imagine having to carry on after that is tough. But I appreciated talking to Matt, about that process and just more generally speaking, his memories of working with truly one of the most legendary broadcasters who have ever worked in minor league baseball. Jim Weber had been with the team for 49 years, almost 7,000 consecutive games. He called every single game he was scheduled to call starting in that debut season of 1975, never missed a game until his death. So his absence left a huge hole in Toledo. When I was in Toledo, there's an insignia on the field behind home plate. There has to be a word for that.
Like field markers.
Field mark, yeah. But it is the initials JW with a headset wrapped around it, honoring Jim Weber. And it was great to talk to Matt Melzak in Toledo about his time with the Mud Hens and specifically his memories of Jim Weber.
Plug in a Hyundai EV and the extraordinary happens. It's not just the ultra-fast charging capability and long range in the Ioniq 5 and Ioniq 6, or the adventure-seeking spirit of the Kona Electric, or the groundbreaking 601 horsepower Ioniq 5N. And it's not just the comfort in knowing that every Hyundai EV is backed by a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited electric battery warranty. Hyundai's EVs transform a low hum into a loud adventure. They bring color to your journey and turn energy into main character energy. So forget everything you thought you knew about EVs and turn the extraordinary into something truly electrifying. There's joy in every journey.
EPA estimated 303-mile driving range for 2024 Ioniq 5 SE SEL limited rear-wheel drive and 361-mile driving range for 2024 Ioniq 6 SE long-range rear-wheel drive with fully charged battery. Estimated range varies for other models and trims and depends on battery capacity, temperature options, and other factors. Limited battery warranty covers defects and materials for 10 years or 100,000 miles, whichever occurs first. See owner's manual for complete warranty details and limitations. Visit HyundaiUSA.com or call 562-314-4603 for more details.
His voice has been the sound of summer in Toledo since his first broadcast on April 12, 1975. Since then, Jim Weber has called more than 6,000 consecutive Mud Hens games. Weber started his radio career doing high school games here in Toledo in 1969 while still working at Jeep. In 1975, he went to Hens general manager Charlie Singer and asked to do games on the radio. Weber hit the airwaves and never looked back.
And good evening, everyone. Welcome to Mud Hens Baseball on a Saturday night. The Mud Hens are hot.
He called back-to-back Governor's Cup championships in 2005 and 2006.
And it is. Bounced out to second. Hooper's got it to Jason Smith. It's over. Whoa, they're charging. Jason Carduth and the Mud Hens have done it. They said they would for the fans of Toledo, and you can see the mob right there.
He was on the call when Mike Hessman became the minor league home run king.
So the 2-0 do. Here it comes. And Mike hits it to deep left field. Way back. Ah! The pressure is gone. The ball is gone. Man, this place is going crazy, and there's about 5,000 more people that wish they were here right now.
In 2014, Weber became the first broadcaster inducted into the International League Hall of Fame. His ability to bring a ball game to life was unmatched. His folksy style made it feel like you were listening to an old friend.
The pitch in. There's one hit into left field. This is deep. This could win the game. This could win the game. There's the tie. And here comes a winning run. The Mud Hens are going to pull it out. Holy Toledo.
Away from the field, Weber was married to his wife Kay for almost 60 years. He had 2 daughters, Christine and Mary. Jim Weber, our friend, has passed. But we won't soon forget the incredible memories we've made over the last 5 decades at the ballpark.
And all I want to say in the ending is I want to enjoy tonight's game just as much as the last 5,061. Thanks.
Yeah, but you said this was, how many years have you been with the Mud Hens?
I've been with the Hens in part since 2010. I started with the Walleye in 2009, and obviously with the county owning both of them. So then I started doing some games with the Hens, 20 a year the first couple of years, and then the first full year for me would have been 2012.
Okay, so hundreds, thousands of games for you, over a decade of
yeah, between the two, over 2, so roughly about 4,300 shy of where Jim was at when he passed.
Yeah, and I'd say probably it's a subjective determination, but probably the most iconic minor league teams are either Durham Bulls or Toledo Mud Hens. I mean, what is it like to not just call games professionally, but call games for such a iconic franchise and such deep-rooted history? seems like there's more ground to cover and more history to draw from.
No question. And yeah, I mean, you're talking a Toledo team that goes back, 100 years plus. I mean, it's one of the great teams of all time, and at any level. And I think that's the exciting part of it is every day, you're calling a game of a team that has been around since basically the dawn of baseball, and that's a really cool feeling. And it's one of the great teams that has ever been around, and I think you really relish in the fact that there's a lot of people that know of the Toledo Mud Hens all across the country. It may not be the case for all of the minor league teams, but if you go around and talk to somebody in California, hey, the Toledo Mud Hens, I know who they are.
Right.
And that's a cool thing. It means a lot, actually.
Yeah. And throughout that time, you called games with Jim Weber, and obviously had a great working relationship with him. What was it like having him as your broadcast partner?
It was something to behold, really, because he's a guy who's a Hall of Famer, who's in the International League Hall of Fame in 2014, and to watch the way he approached every day and the way he took every game as its own entity. Didn't matter the record. If Toledo was 20 games over 500 or 20 games below 500, he had the same broadcast. And he would be that kind of guy, and just watching him, the way he approached the day, approached the games, and the amount of stories that he had that added into it. I mean, you see 6,395 games, you're going to have a whole boatload of stories, and he certainly had that. But it was just, he was a great man, and I think a lot of people, I've tried to tell them that I've gotten to know him so well on a personal level. He and I developed a very good friendship over the last 12 years working full-time with each other, that we would barely go even in the off-season without talking for a couple of weeks, just keeping up on stuff. And then he started coming over to, be in the booth and some hockey games, and just all of a sudden he'd be right behind me while I was calling games for hockey, and just kind of getting into that game a little bit more too. And the way he was just kind of a mentor, I think is probably a great word, because he was always happy to help me along on the broadcast side for baseball, because obviously I'm more of a hockey guy, and I've developed more into a baseball guy, and I've had to work at that a lot over the years. And he was always happy to say, hey, I like what you did there, or Matt, may not have been the best choice there. So he was always good about that, as really as nice a guy as you could imagine and to have to work with.
Yeah, and what are some things? I mean, you talked about the way he would approach every game as its own entity. But what are some things you feel like you really picked up from him that you carry on today in your broadcast?
I think I'll start right there, because when I first started doing full-time games, we didn't have a good season for hockey, and then we went in and didn't have a good season for baseball, and we went in and had another bad season for hockey, and then another bad season for baseball. It was just right in that time, 2012 to 2014, before all of a sudden we got really good on the hockey side again. But I was so into every game, and that emotion of it, and I kind of learned from him that every game's going to have its own thing. It doesn't matter what the record will be. Every game's going to have something for you to be excited about, and if you look at every game as an individual vacuum, then all of a sudden you don't have the highs and the lows of winning and losing that can sometimes come along with it. And especially when you got such a long season for baseball. It's a little bit different with hockey because the season's not as long, but for baseball, the fact that you're playing out now 150 games, there's going to be some nights where the game's not going to go your way. So you've got to have your ability to call a game and be part of a game that sometimes doesn't go the way you'd like to see it. And I thought now I prepare differently, because I'm prepared for all aspects of a game and without the emotion side of it in there, because we don't know what we're going to have today, and that's the beauty of sports. And you got to be just ready to call what's in front of you.
Yeah, and he was known for having kind of a fun-loving personality, a guy liked to laugh, liked to tell jokes. What are some of your memories, your impressions, from that side of it?
I always said, and I've always told our crew this, we could count on Jim to give you a small funny during the course of a week. Yeah. And then a couple times during the year, he would give you a massive funny, something that you're going to want to save in the archives, which is true. We we've got a kind of a whole reel of great Jim Weber moments where he just made you die laughing. And he got me multiple times on the show where he'd either say something or do something and you would just start laughing. Like, we're on the broadcast. You're not supposed to go into that kind of laughter, but yet he would say something that would just have you floored and you just couldn't help it. And that's just the way he was. He is a very fun-loving guy, and that's probably why he could absorb some years where, even in the 90s, where they didn't win a lot at all in Toledo. But yet he was there every day, had fun doing it. He loved what he did, and he loved being at the ballpark. And, I know he was really looking forward to doing next season because it was going to be his 50th, and something that's very rare for anyone to make. And then before he would probably start backing down a little bit on the amount of games that he was doing, but he just enjoyed it so much, and you could tell when he showed up that he was enjoying what he was doing.
And I know there's so many of them, and these things can kind of blur together. But do you have any particular favorite Jim Weber stories, whether it's in the broadcast booth or elsewhere?
I will give you one great thing about Jim was he was very family oriented. His family meant everything to him, and at the time of his passing, daily he was watching his great grandkid. Him and his wife would watch their great grandkid Drake, who was 3 years old, during the day, and then he would be doing games at night, and he loved every second of that. And I have a 2-year-old daughter, and he kind of just welcomes her right into everything. That's just the way he was. Very big family guy that I will always never forget about him. And then I think if you're going to talk about a moment or two, boy, there's so many. Yeah. It'd be hard to pinpoint one, but I was just thinking the other day about, when he did, years ago, we did a Harry Potter night. Everybody knows about Harry Potter. I don't really know much of it, and neither did he. And we were showing the Quidditch, whatever the sport is that they play in there, right? And they're riding around on the brooms and stuff. And he says a line that goes, boy, that reminds me of my wife and her 3 best friends riding those brooms out there. And I just start dying laughing, and it just takes off this whole thing. We had, people would post on, Twitter like, hey, Jim, I saw his broken, I had this broken, broom. Is K okay? It just took off on this whole thing. And I don't know if he meant it to be that way or if it just popped out of his brain. But, it's just one of those iconic things that he would just all of a sudden say. And you would just look at him and go, man, that's amazing. And you'd just laugh at it. You'd still laugh at it to this day. You did when I just told it to you. It's amazing. It's a funny line. It's a great line. And that's what he was great at.
And I remember talking to him in 2018 and rereading that story recently. And, he was talking about going out with Jose Lima and shutting down bars and pool halls and AAA towns all over the country. I bet he had a lot of stories in that regard too.
Yeah, he had a lot of stories, not for air, on that end from some of his adventures there on the road. But yeah, he would get after it on the road a little bit. He enjoyed it, and I didn't get to see too much of that with him because of he would travel and I wouldn't during the summer, save the playoffs. And when we made the playoffs in 2019 and played Durham, he and I went down to Durham and we traveled together down there, and I saw, he had it all mapped out. He's like, hey, we're going to do the game. We got this spot we're going to go to after the game. That's a guarantee. We're going to do it each night. Don't worry about it. I already got it set up. And I'm like, okay, I just go along. And, he had everything. He knew where he was going to go basically in every city, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes without saying, but it must now be tremendously difficult to have him pass unexpectedly and then just keep going through the whole season. What has it been like, carrying on?
It's been difficult some nights because, you've done so many games with him, and I estimated somewhere around 800 that I did with him. And so, there's times where I'll see a play or even call a play and I'll think of something that he's said or talked about for that certain play, and it'll just spark that memory. And I did the first game after he passed that Friday night. It was a road game. We did it remotely, and I just struggled to even get through the game. It was so hard to even think about the fact that I was doing the game and not him for a road broadcast. And then the first home game we did that next Tuesday here, and I couldn't even get through the open and the pregame, and just because I miss him, and I do miss him a lot actually, because it was so one of the great things about summer was I got to hang out with him too, and I kind of looked at him as almost like a second dad in a way, because he started doing games before I was even born, and it kind of just took me under his wing a little bit, and it's just I still miss him to this day. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
And what has it been like seeing the reaction of the sports community and Toledo at large, paying tribute these months?
I would even say, going even further, just the amount of support from the amount of other broadcasters that I've heard from personally, just that knew Jim, and guys that are now long in the NHL or in Major League Baseball that have reached out to me and say, hey, I can't believe we've lost Jim. And, saw the whole thing Jason Benetti did on the Tigers broadcast, talking about his trips in when he was with Syracuse and hanging out with Jim Weber, and how people told him before the first time he went into Toledo, hey, you're going to love Jim Weber. Yeah. Just be prepared. You're going to need to get some Jim Weber time. So he was prepared, and then started loving coming in because of the fact that you get to hang out with Jim. And that was kind of almost like the right for a lot of broadcasters. And just hearing from all of them, and the support across the country from a lot of broadcasters has been terrific and tremendous. And a lot of the guys did something on their broadcast, or moment of silence we saw just in Charlotte this past week, where they did that on before one of the games, just to honor Jim. And it tells you how many people he touched over his time as a play-by-play guy.
And going forward, what are things that you can do, or this team can do, to honor his memory and keep his memory alive?
I think they've done a great job so far. You can see on the field they put they did the logo behind home plate for Jim Weber. They did patches on the jerseys, and to honor him for the rest of the season. And I'm sure there'll be more coming out. I think they'll probably do more, especially next year, with it would have been his 50th year. I think that's going to be something that you could see, like a Jim Weber Day. Yeah. I think it'd be great to do, and we could have a lot of fun with that. And, his wife actually gave me one of the shirts that drove me nuts. He wore it on the July 3rd or July 4th, whichever day we played on. He had this shirt for about the last half decade, where it looked like somebody just dumped 3 cans of paint over it, red, white, and blue, and he'd wear it every year. Well, it just drove me nuts, and I would just tell him on the broadcast, this shirt just drives me nuts. Well, his wife brought it in and gave it to me to say, I want to make sure I see this next year on July 3rd, and Jim would have wanted you to do it. And I'm like, I got it, I'll wear it. So it's sitting in my drawer at home. It's ready to go for next year, and I know I'm sure the team will probably come up with some other great things too to honor him.
Yeah, well, he's getting the last laugh when you put that shirt on.
Oh, he'll be laughing. There's no doubt about it. See, Matt, told you.
Get more in a new Mazda from Ramsey Mazda. More selection and more savings. Lease a new 2024 Mazda CX-50 2.5 S Select, just $199 a month. Or buy with 0% APR financing for 36 months at Ramsey Mazda, Route 17 North in Ramsey. Choose wisely. Choose Ramsey Mazda.
Call 833-853-2970 for lease details. Excludes tax, title, and registration. 0 security deposit. VIN RN220827. MSRP $32,520. APR $2778 per $1,000 financed.
That was Toledo Mud Hens broadcaster Matt Melzak. Appreciate the time he took to speak with me prior to a game in Toledo at the end of August. And now we'll pivot, change gears a little bit. Let Sam Dykstra take the reins. He's got some top storylines to talk about here. And I'm a fan of top storylines, so take it away, Sam.
I'm trying to think if this is the first time you've ever been on what we used to call the 3 strike segment.
Yeah.
The on-field stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I know players.
Know players.
They're on the field, swinging the bats, pitching the balls.
They're the ones doing the things in the middle of the park while you're running around the outside of it.
Yeah. There's some peripheral characters, but I appreciate them.
And you've interviewed. So, I mean, you were on the podcast last week talking to Max Clark, which
I even talked to players. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah. Which dovetails into my first talking point here. So we were talking about this before, single A and high A coming to a close this week. I had the MLB Pipeline newsletter. So I wanted to just tackle some of the top storylines from those 2 levels and kind of celebrate them while we still had their regular seasons in play. And one of the things that stood out to me from this season were just the way 2023 top picks performed. Now, we talked plenty about how 5 of the top 7 picks in last year's Major League draft are already in the major leagues. You're looking at Paul Skeens, Dylan Cruz, Wyatt Langford, Jacob Wilson, Rhett Lauder just got called up by the Cincinnati Reds, but that still leaves two guys who are not in the major leagues, and they were prep picks from last year's draft. Max Clark, who you talked to last week, Ben, and Walker Jenkins of the Minnesota Twins system. Both of those guys have gone from single A to high A. They look like toolsy players. Max Clark, one of the best defenders in the minor leagues, incredibly fast out there, has a rocket of an arm, and he's hit really well. He's done a really good job of not expanding the zone, putting the ball in play, letting that speed play. The power is still a little bit of a question for him moving forward, but this is just his first full season. We'll see where things can take off in 2025 and beyond in that department. Walker Jenkins dealt with an injury first half of the season, was kind of a slow starter, but has moved up to high A, Cedar Rapids in the Twins system. Another guy who could be the future center fielder for the Twins, given the way that he's shown really good ability inside the zone and making good swing decisions, and he can push the envelope with his speed as well. And he's got a little bit more power than Max Clark. And I think that overall impact makes him a slightly better chance at being a 5-tool player. One guy we haven't mentioned who was just outside that top 7 is Blake Mitchell, who was the Royals' first-round pick last year, and that would cause a lot of people to kind of scratch their heads a little bit. It's pretty rare that high school catchers work out from the first round. It's just a lot of development time. A lot of things can go wrong. They're asked to do a lot of things, right? And a lot of things can fall apart. Blake Mitchell, his first full season, to say it's been anything but a success would be wrong. I mean, he's at the time I wrote this, he had 18 homers and 25 steals. Nobody expected him to be a stolen base threat, but I think his understanding of the running game, when to move, when to, when things aren't working with a pitcher, that's showing baseball IQ. So he might not have the raw tool of speed, but he can pick his spots really well. And I think that speaks well to his overall game. The power's played basically as expected. It's at least above average, could be plus in the future. You look at what Kansas City has at the catcher spot in the majors, and Salvador Perez has been there forever and been there through, the ebbs and flows of the major league success for Kansas City, and is obviously a big part of what they're doing up there now, but he's not going to be there forever. And I think Blake Mitchell could be a pretty good heir apparent. So the performance of those those 3 guys from the top 8 picks from last year, that certainly stood out to me. One of the other things, if we're looking at a team perspective, is the Modesto Nuts, who, if you look at their overall record this year, there have been some teams in single A and high A that have better overall records. But I think the long-lasting impact of this Modesto team could be really something to watch moving forward. I mean, they had a 41-23 record in the first half. They won the California League North Division first half title. So they are going to the postseason no matter what. That's already locked in. But you look at the players who came through that team already: Colt Emerson, Lazaro Montez. Those guys are current top 100 prospects right now. Johnny Farmelo, Michael Arroyo, they could be top 100. They could be top 100 prospects at some point down the line. Farmelo's been dealing with a right ACL tear that's kind of limited him this year. He's been out since June. Arroyo's only 5'8", but has really good power. And then you look at some of the moves that the Mariners made at the trade deadline, and I know maybe they're not working out the way that they would have hoped at that top level, but Aiden Smith, Brody Hopkins, Will Schomburg, Jacob Sharp, they were all from Modesto, and then they traded those guys away because they were valuable trade pieces. So, Aiden Smith and Brody Hopkins could become big-time prospects for the Rays. And if we're looking down the line and those guys are making impacts, and you think oh, Colt Emerson is in Seattle, Lazaro Montez is in Seattle, Aiden Smith is in St. Pete, Brody Hopkins is in St. Pete, this could be one of those teams that you look back on and you're like, wow, this was incredibly loaded. We already feel that way now about Modesto, but I think its legend could only grow in future years. And just this is kind of looking a ways back, but you kind of have to remember too, and this is the third storyline I'll touch on, is that high A and single A were the rise of 2 major breakouts this year. I mean, the 2 breakout prospects of the year for me, as we sit here right now, were Quinn Matthews and Christian Campbell of the St. Louis Cardinals organization and Boston Red Sox organization, respectively. They were only taking 10 picks away from each other. Matthews was 122nd overall. Christian Campbell was 132nd overall last year. They both had, their issues coming into pro ball. Matthews didn't show exceptional velocity coming out of Stanford. Campbell could hit the ball pretty hard, but it was mostly on the ground. And he had some defensive questions coming out of Georgia Tech. Now you look at those guys. Matthews has added a few miles per hour to his fastball. His breaking stuff is pretty good. His changeup is exceptional. He's now up to AAA Memphis and leading the minor leagues in strikeouts. Christian Campbell has been either a top or in the top 2 for all of minor league full season in OPS this year. He started out his year at High A Greenville, where he batted .306 with a .418 on-base percentage and .558 slugging percentage with 8 homers. His power has actually gotten better as he's gone up, and he's done really well so far at AAA Worcester. Quinn Matthews, 4 levels, single A, high A, double A, triple A. Christian Campbell, 3 levels, high A, double A, triple A. I think those guys are putting themselves in position to maybe be competing for a major league spot come next spring. I mean, the Cardinals could always use rotation help. The Red Sox might have an opening at second base. Christian Campbell has played center field, some shortstop, even some third. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's right in the thick of things there. But it's crazy to think like those guys started their seasons at Palm Beach and Greenville, and now they're exceptional prospects. So it's kind of fun to look back on that. One other thing I just want to highlight real fast is I think this has gotten a little bit underplayed. I mean, we love hitting streaks, but on-base streaks can be just as fun. Demetrio Crisantes, who's the number 13 prospect in the Arizona Diamondbacks system. When I wrote this, he was on a 52-game on-base streak. I can tell you as we sit here now on Thursday, that's up to 53 games. It's active. He has reached base in 53 straight games. He started out his season in the Arizona Complex League, trying to put things together, but he's been an exceptional hitter. Wasn't in our Arizona top 30 to begin the year. Now is up to number 13. We'll see how things land for him defensively, but the guy's got an exceptional bat. I mean, he's going to probably jump at least into their top 10 when we do our offseason update, just given the momentum that he's shown, to end the season here with Visalia. I know Arizona loves his bat. They're going to have to find a new challenge for him next year. But considering he was repeating the complex at the beginning of the year and now dominating single A, that's really been fun to follow. And it's not over. So check in on Visalia box scores Friday, Saturday, Sunday, see if he can keep this streak going and maybe make it as many, I think, as he can get it up to 57, given what the Visalia schedule is the rest of the way. But yeah, that would be something for Demetrio Crisantes. So those are just some storylines. I have more of them up on the site at mlb.com/pipeline, or if you got the Pipeline newsletter this week and didn't get a chance to open it, go search my name in your inbox. You can find that. We'll be doing more of these as the season goes along and more levels end the year, and we can look back on more storylines, talk about that more next week. So that wraps it up for single A and high A. We'll talk, I think, a little bit about their postseasons next week, check in on them as they get rolling starting next Tuesday. But for now, let's send it out to our friend and yours, Josh Jackson, with Ghosts of the Minors.
Hey, it's Tiki Barber. I have to admit that early in my football career, I had a bit of trouble holding on to the balls on the gridiron. But when it comes to your own, don't fumble them like I did. Choose Sax underwear with their scientifically engineered ballpark pouch. It secures your manhood, keeping everything chafe-free and gives your boys the breathing room they need. You'll have complete freedom of movement and effortless comfort all day long. I'm Tiki Barber, and I approve this message because no one likes a fumble, especially down there.
We interrupt this podcast to bring you another thrilling edition of Ghosts of the Minors. Now, here's your correspondent and host, Joshua Jackson.
Welcome back to Ghosts of the Minors. All of you out there in Radioland must identify the legitimate historical ball club or player hiding amidst the fraudulent pair. One played his heart out on the field. The others were never there in anything more than spirit. In the last segment, I asked you which of the following minor league baseball players did at one time exist. A. Off a kneel. B. On a seat. C. Stood a foot. You ought to be standing tall if you picked A. Off a kneel, who played in the minors for 6 seasons and appeared in 4 games of a World Series winning club during his only major league stint. Born Theophilus Fountain Neal in Logan, Illinois in June of 1876, Offa got on a baseball trajectory in the 3I League of 1903. starting the season with the Joliet Standards and hoofing it through the club's relocation and renaming to the Springfield Foot Trackers. Come November, he signed a new contract to play for Springfield again the next season, and 1904 would turn out to be a major year for Neil, ending with a major deal for Neil. Old Offa was off to a hot start with the team by then renamed the Hustlers, and he was off to a hot finish too. He was sold to John McGraw's New York Giants for $250 that August, with a contract stipulating, per the Rock Island Argus, if Neil makes good, the manager for the New York team will pay Springfield an additional $450. Neil did make good, but Neil didn't make immediate, not joining the pennant-winning Giants in 04. The offseason news for the Giants, who refused to play the Boston Americans in what would have been the second modern World Series, was that McGraw was more or less standing pat with his winning roster rather than signing a lot of newcomers. This led to papers far and wide reporting on the Neil deal through the end of the calendar year, with Offa described as a heavy hitter, and with many articles noting that he'd long spent his off-seasons working as a school teacher. But it was no academic matter that there was not an open position for Neil to stand in with the Giants. Shortstop Bill Dallin would be 35 in 05, true, but he'd also led the NL with 80 RBIs in 1904. The press still described Neil as Dallin's apparent successor in the spring, but by the end of camp, McGraw felt that he needed more seasoning. Perhaps Old Bay seasoning, because Offa Neil was sent to Baltimore. He played the full year with the Eastern League's Orioles until he debuted with the Giants on September 30th. He played 4 games with them, but he wasn't on the roster, with which New York beat Connie Mack's Philadelphia Athletics 4-1 in the 1905 World Series. There were rumors over the 05-06 offseason that the Giants knew they wouldn't have a spot for him, and that Fred Penny, manager of the Boston National League Club, had serious interest in Neil. Indeed, Bill Dallin would turn out to be New York's shortstop through 1907 and kick around the majors until 1911. Neil, though, would never play for Boston, nor in the bigs again. He split 06, bouncing around 4 clubs, in 07 between the Louisville Club and the American Association, and back with Springfield in the 3I League. But if Offa's playing career was off and on, his career in education was taking off. In 06, he was nominated to be superintendent of the schools of Benton, Illinois. In 1909, the Louisville Herald ran a headline in huge font: Offa Neil decides not to play here. The story suggests that Neil faced pressure, whether from himself or the people of Benton, to choose between remaining superintendent or playing in the American Association again, and he opted to remain superintendent. And that's how Offa Neil sat out. Now, on to the question for next time. Which of these teams did the work on this side of the pond in the minors of yesteryear? A, the Scotch Spinners. B, the Belfast Ploughmen. C, the Welch Miners. Want to know the answer? Put in the labor. Or tune to the next Ghosts of the Miners. But for now, you'll have to excuse me. My producer Ben Hill is judging me from his high horse, and I've got to rise above it.
All right, thanks as always to Josh for this week's episode of Ghosts of the Miners, and thanks once again to Matt Melzak for talking to Ben in Toledo on this week's interview segment. Before we send you off into the week and the weekend in minor league baseball, we have yet another edition of Name That Dude. Ben, you will be the one, I'll be the one naming that dude, hopefully, but you'll be the one providing the clues as to whom this dude is.
That's correct. And this guy, it's a little before your time, young Sam, but I believe he made enough of an impact that it will be a familiar name to you. He played a lot of years in the minor leagues and a lot of years in the major leagues. It was an odyssey for him, often tumultuous. A guy from North Carolina, rural North Carolina. And drafts were a little different back then. He was drafted by the Cincinnati Reds in the 21st round of the 1978 June amateur draft from Lewisburg College in North Carolina. Didn't sign. Then he was drafted in the first round of the 1979 January draft secondary phase. Didn't sign. Then finally in the 1979 June draft. So there was a January draft in
There was it was very complicated back in the day, and I'm glad we don't have it anymore. But
yeah, I'm sure you are. But finally, third time's a charm, New York Yankees in the first round of the 1979 June draft. He signs with the Yankees organization and makes his professional debut that 1979 season in the Appy League with Paintsville. Paintsville Yankees of Paintsville, Kentucky. Not a team I'm very familiar with. Then he moves on to Greensboro, then playing at old War Memorial Stadium. They were the Hornets then. Of course, Greensboro's team is now the Grasshoppers. They were a different insect back then. Plays a full season in Greensboro in 1980. Up to Nashville when they were Double-A in the Southern League in 1981, still in the Yankees organization. Columbus, Nashville in 82, and then up to Columbus Triple-A, Columbus Clippers for the Yankees in 82. Columbus again, almost an entire full season in 1983 before finally making his major league debut with the Yankees at the tail end of the 1983 season. Then dropped by the Yankees, signs with Cleveland, spends most of 1984 in Maine with the Maine Guides of the International League.
Maine Guides mentioned.
It's
always a good podcast when the Maine Guides are mentioned.
Yeah, Josh Jackson will be happy. The 1984 Maine Guides. Then up to Cleveland in 84 after playing with Maine. Then the Indians. All of 85 with the Indians, all of 86. 87 back down to Triple-A. Buffalo Bisons when they were a Cleveland affiliate. A little time in Cleveland. In 87, then the Montreal organization. Indianapolis Indians in 88. Then the Expos, 88, 89, 90. Then the Braves, 91, 92, 93. Then the Red Sox, 94. Texas, 95. Toronto, 96 and 97. Then a little bit of the end of the 97 season with the Dodgers, 98 with Minnesota, and finally 1999 at the age of 40, back to the Braves to finish up his career. A long major league career.
And you've never said you've never said games, you've never said.
I did not. So that's just where he's from and who he played for. He was primarily an outfielder. And his biggest weapon was his speed. He stole 620 bases in the major leagues and another 460 in the minors to bring it up to 1,080 stolen bases in his professional career. Was one of the biggest base stealers in the game, but he really didn't come into his own as a major league base stealer until really with the Expos in the late 80s, and then really turned it on 1991, 72 stolen bases for those worst to first Atlanta Braves.
I mean, you talk about Expos and stealing bases, and I think Tim Raines, but I don't think Tim Raines bounced around that much.
No, definitely not Tim Raines, although I think in Montreal in the late 80s, he was a teammate of Tim Raines, stealing probably less bases than Tim Raines, but 46, 37, 50 in consecutive years with the Expos from 88 to 90. I mean, his career high, including the minors in stolen bases, was that he stole 107 combined in 1982 between Triple-A and Double-A. So he actually did have a triple-digit stolen base season in the minor leagues.
And it's good to mention that because Chandler Simpson is closing in on a triple-digit stolen base season this year in 2024.
Exactly. And his brother, who also made the major leagues, has the all-time California League base stealing record.
Oh, don't tell me that, because that's a bigger. Oh no. Oh, shoot.
Do you know it now?
That's something I feel like I should know.
His brother also played in the majors, but some injury hit him, and he did not.
Oh, that's gonna annoy me more, man.
And he did not play much in the majors, but his brother stole a absolutely ridiculous, 144 stolen bases?
Oh man, that's gonna annoy me.
A couple of boys from Evergreen, North Carolina. His brother stole 144 stolen bases for the 1983 Bakersfield Mariners.
Because that came up when Billy Hamilton
It did.
also played for
So
Bakersfield.
we've dropped this guy, his brother's name on the show in relation to those. His brother, who played more time never had a base stealing season that prodigious, but again, 620 in the minors, or in the majors, so he's up on like all time stolen base boards. Had a tumultuous career, some substance abuse issues. There were times he was out of the game or getting back in the game due to that. I think one of the reasons it took a long time for him to solidify himself. But once he got a foothold, he stuck around all the way till the age of 40. 1991 Atlanta Brave. Again, I know it's not Vince Coleman. I know this is a little before your time.
Vince Coleman is like right there. He played for the Red Sox in '94. You said
he played for the Red Sox in 1994, the strike-shortened season. Yeah. Still stole 42 bases in 103 games.
I'm trying to think of like who I remember. I don't remember. I was 4 years old. I don't remember much about the.
That's why I think if Tyler was here, he'd have gotten it. Tyler's a little older than you.
I'm embarrassed. I feel like this. Can you give me initials, maybe?
No. He shares a surname with a former president, a 20th century president.
20th century president. Well, that could be John. That could be George. That could be Bill.
His first name is the same as a elevator company.
Otis Nixon.
There we go. The great Otis Nixon, his brother Donnell, two boys from rural North Carolina, Evergreen, North Carolina. Donnell, his brother made the majors, but had a horrible injury. I think in the outfield, trying to catch a ball. Otis, he was now 65 years old. It was a pretty tumultuous career, and he had his issues, but I always liked Otis Nixon because he stuck around and got by with his speed. And when you're playing to age 40, I mean, one, to still be pretty fast, and two,
you should be slowing down at that age. Yeah, it's amazing those guys who really don't or still stay above average speed and like just make careers out of doing that.
Right. Even his age 40 season, he only played 84 games, but stole 26 bases in 176 at bats. I mean, he was still a speed threat. I mean, his average at that point had dipped to 205. No slugging to speak of. Career 270 hitter, on base 344, slugging 314. This guy did not get many extra base hits, but a stolen base essentially gives you an extra base hit, and he had 620 of those in his major league career.
I almost wonder, and this is something I talk with baseball folks a lot about, is that type of player going to make a comeback? Where
it seems like we're entering this new era.
Yeah, where guys are pushing the issue on the base paths. There is value in having that type of guy at the end of the roster who can swipe bags left and right. I mean, I don't know what type of player Chandler Simpson's going to be eventually, but if he has Otis Nixon's career, and I think that's certainly possible, that would be good for Chandler Simpson, but it would also kind of speak to where baseball is. Because somebody like Otis Nixon at a certain point would not have kept getting those looks in like the 2000s, right when he got out of the game because of age. It would have been tougher because so much emphasis was more on slugging and how hard can you hit the ball. And now, yes, that's still part of it, but if you can find other ways to be elite, and with some of the rules changes, you'll find your way onto a roster. So that's a fascinating case. I'm gonna follow Otis Nixon's career versus Chandler Simpson and see how they compare. But yeah, no, that was a good one.
Yeah. And it all started in 1979 Paintsville Yankees. I mean, Paintsville, Kentucky. Looking who else was on that team. Greg Gagne, one of the only other major leaguers on that team, and Pete Filson also made the major leagues. That was a juggernaut, those 1979 Paintsville Yankees. They went 52-13. Man. And that's where Otis Nixon made his major league professional debut, in 1979 in the Appy League. So I always enjoy seeing these long defunct teams and getting a chance to visit with them, as it were. But Paintsville, Kentucky, never been there either. Let's when we go to Hickory tonight, on our way back home, we'll stop in Paintsville, Kentucky.
Yeah. All right. Well, Well, that has been this edition of Name That Dude. And this has been another edition of the show before the show. Thank you for tuning in wherever you found us. If you found us on Apple Podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe. Tell your friends about us. Reach out with any ideas you want to have us cover in future episodes. The off season is not that far away. It allows us time to be a little bit more creative with some of the episode ideas we have. We have one idea cooking with Josh Jackson, which we'll see how that goes. But there's the ultimate tease on that one. But yeah, no, thank you so much for tuning in, Ben. Thank you for all you've done this week on the show before the show. And we'll be back next week, hopefully with Tyler. If not, tune into the WBSC U23 World Cup. Listen into Tyler. You can hear him call entire games from China. Yeah. We can't wait to have him back on the show. Until then, I've been Sam Dykstra. Talk to you guys soon.
Hiring is a lonely business. Posting jobs, sifting through resumes, interviews with unqualified applicants, being ghosted. What if you could link with dozens of qualified candidates who are ready to work right now with just one connection? That's Express Employment Professionals. Find us at expresspros.com. One connection, the workforce you need. Problem solved. Express Employment Professionals. expresspros.com. Breshpros.com. 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 Breshpros.